At the end of our last video, the Aga Khan presented 4 elements to strengthen our democracy. The first of the 4 is to improve constitutional understanding. Now, the basic principles of a democracy is freedom. A country needs a constitution to state its founding principles and to constrain its governments with laws, ensuring the adherence to the stated principles. Democracy can be summarized as having 4 basic guidelines. First, it defines a country's principal values, establishing a blueprint for the type of society we want to live in. Second, it defines and structures the country's political system and establishes codes of conduct. Third, the Constitution works as a safeguard against tyrannical use of power, ensuring that the electorate works in the best interest of the people and state. Last, the Constitution protects us from ourselves, preventing impulses of both people and the electorate from changing its basic structure. Therefore, a constitution is essential to upholding a democracy's right to be free.
My first suggestion is that the current challenges to governance should be seen less as problems of democracy than as problems of constitutionality.
Constitutions are formed and based on freedoms of the people, and because of this representation, it is the marginalized who is seeking change. Those factions that are a direct consequence of pluralism, that which the Aga Khan is a champion of. As the Aga Khan stated in our last episode, these pluralistic factions compete for supremacy, and a constitutional revision is nothing more than the domestic population submitting to these factions. Ironically, you being an Islamic leader from a totalitarian system, these changes in core values would be giving into your will.
There are more countries today than I can ever recollect before that are grappling with outdated constitutions, frameworks that seem unable to reconcile opposing factions, advance economic priorities, encourage civil society, or protect human rights.
A constitution is there to protect the people from a tyrannical authority and to represent the people's core values. So what is outdated? It is outdated in so much that the Constitution is not inclusive to the pluralistic strategy that is attempting to redefine our core values and remove the restraint that force the electorate to respect and do right by its people. Ironically, your claim of an outdated constitution which is incapable of achievement in modern times is really you saying that it doesn't accommodate your interests economically with renewable energies, compete factionally, you do run the largest NGO network in the world, and human rights is merely an extension of this pluralistic faction rivalry, which if not addressed immediately will destroy our core values and freedoms.
But constitutional revision, especially in developing countries, is not easy. One problem is a poor understanding of comparative government systems. That subject is not part of most educational curricula, and in the countries I know best, the media rarely explain the logic or the options of constitutional change.
Higher education, particularly in the Americas, is polluted with Marxist conflict theory. And what has that produced? A bunch of commie bastards known as Antifa. Once again using education as a weapon to program the kids through conditioning, establishing combative factions competing for supremacy. By doing this will only lead to one conclusion: the overthrowing of our freedoms and the authoritative restraints which our Constitution outlines and upholds. There is only one thing to teach when it comes to comparative government system. The only one that works is democracy, and to place restraints on the people and not the government is to become a communist state.
In my view, then, a first step to better democratic governance is a better public understanding of constitutional principles.
The 3 basic principles of the American Constitution are absolute rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, self-government, and separation of powers. The idea that each branch of the government, judicial, executive, and legislature, have advantages and disadvantages with the others. Separation of power is also referred to as checks and balances. Now, it's safe to assume that most democratic countries share these basic principles, and like America, promotes them and informs its citizens to these basic rights. So where is the understanding needed? And for what purpose might greater knowledge be needed outside of exploitation of said principles?
It is easy, for example, to say that we want government of, by, and for the people, that governments should be servants of the people and ultimately responsible to them. But that does not mean that government decisions must be made by an enormous range of far-flung participants, by vast plebiscites, or popular referenda, or public opinion polling, or the number of hits on an internet blog.
Therefore, homogeny is the only way to create peace out of this chaos. And yes, governments make decisions by and for the people. That is the only reason the electorate exists, is by and for the people. An economic example might make this clear. McDonald's sells hamburgers, and we buy them by the billions. And for this, McDonald's is the biggest restaurant franchise in the world. But if we stop buying hamburgers, McDonald's would no longer exist. Existence in politics, as in economics, by and for the people. Because without the people, you are nothing.
Such misapplied versions of democracy can produce irrational leadership and poorly informed policies. Sometimes efforts to impose simplistic popular democracy can create voids of governance which can be exploited to dangerous ends, and I have seen this in various countries in the developing world.
National and regional decisions are made in the name of the people. And to say this is to assume that one's people are misinformed and irrational. And I think it's much safer to assume that people are well informed and very rational when considering what is best for them. The issue is pluralism and the lack of homogeny within society today. It weakens the voices of the people and leads to authoritarianism.
Various governmental decisions. My response would emphasize the idea of balanced authority, including the concept of healthy federalism. For increasingly diverse societies, a constitution that divides and balances power is essential.
Federalism is a centralized system of governance and resembles more a totalitarian socialist structure. Now, who has power outside the elected officials? So what authority needs to be balanced within society? Between whom? Should each and every marginalized group be given balanced control within a given society? In doing so would only lead to the development of enclaves and the destruction of a homogenous identity and statehood.
In discussing constitutional challenges, it is impossible to ignore the recent revival or creation of new theocratic political parties in the Islamic world. There, the question is how theocratical principles of governance can operate constitutionally in increasingly secular political environments.
There is no way to incorporate theological politics into the free world. This is not Iran, this is the West. Religion and state stand separate, and this is why we have religious freedoms, which you are exploiting. The Aga Khan attempting to instill theology as an aspect of governance, a foreign theology at that. Wow, an Islamic leader trying to infiltrate Christian nations through theocratic politics and constitutional manipulation. When will we ever wake up?
It seems essential to me that such principles should be regularly tested by the electoral process, if only so that the Muslim world can have a better understanding of the secularization processes which are inherent in Western democracy.
I was taught in university that when you understand something in its principal form, you now can control and manipulate it. Kinda sounds like what Islam is pursuing in the West, creating theological political parties along with the manipulation and transformation of constitutional principles. Islam challenging the electoral process, positioning itself in the West through politics, Our democracy is being destroyed through constitution and politics in the name of Islamic supremacy. The Ummah is here and ready to take what our ancestors fought and worked hard for, to pave these roads that we are now allowing to be trampled and destroyed by traitors and outsiders.
And democratic principles, in turn, must respect the broad diversity of human faiths and cultures.
It does. The Western's faith is Christian, and that is written into every constitution, and it respects our culture as it represents our core values. A nation's constitution is not there to represent the values and faiths of the marginalized, and one of its basic principles is to prevent the whims and utopian dreams of domestic and outsiders alike from changing it in structure and integrity. It also keeps state and faith separate, so that your beliefs are free and open to everybody. Theological politics will remove the most basic human right, the freedom to believe that which you think to be true. To speak honestly, the actions taken in the name of Islam and Islamic supremacy, I think most of the Western population would accept a constitutional amendment right about now, in that the Constitution be made to restrict religious freedoms to the faiths that pose no risk to citizen or state.
My central point, in sum, is that we cannot build better democratic performance over time without a better understanding of constitutional values.
Western nations, in accordance to the Aga Khan, should take on the responsibility of training outsiders in how to infiltrate and do away with us. How is it that the Aga Khan is being given a stage to present this? And the daunting aspect of all of this is that the Western leaders are listening and taking action on his consultation. Pluralism isn't our strength, it's our greatest risk. How naive have we become to what is going on around us? The West claims its pursuit of peace, but the unintentional consequence of these types of choices is war and death of self and identity. Our ancestors' battles and triumphs were all in vain. Like, share, and subscribe. Click that notification button and check us out on social media. Links are in the description below.